Hello everyone, welcome to the video. Salt here. Today we are going to be going over the Basmu and its alternate fire. Now this is the second video I've done on the Basmu. The first video was a few days ago on the Basmu's primary fire. I actually need to go back to that video's thumbnail and switch it to where it actually says primary fire under the Basmu. And then this video will have alternate fire under the Basmu. Okay, so let's get into the Basmu here. Now, in this weapon series, I typically will not mix a weapon with external factors, and I just show the weapon how strong it could be by itself, and then I leave it up to the viewer to make their own intelligent conclusions about adding external things to it. Now, I'm not going to do that this video, and it's because the Basmu's alternate fire is a little bit of a gimmick weapon. It doesn't actually function very good at all unless you use external factors. It's very, very powerful when you use those external things, but it doesn't really function like it should without it. So if I was to do this build without some external factors, it really wouldn't be showing this weapon how it should be used. So I don't want to do that. So I am going to show it with some external factors. I'm going to explain those externals. Okay. So the Basmu and its alternate fire. Right here is the primary. We're not really going to be focusing on this. We're going to scroll all the way down to the held version of it here. So the reason I say that this is more of like a gimmick weapon is because this has a gigantic critical damage multiplier. I believe this is the primary weapon with the highest critical damage multiplier in the game. Now the critical chance is extremely low. So this is where it's kind of gimmicky here. You know, you can't bank on this critical damage multiplier without using externals to increase critical chance, unfortunately. Because if we were to look at like a critical mod here, critical delay for instance, big 200% crit damage mod, well, that's only going to be 200% of 2%. So when you add that to this weapon, it's still only 6%. So multiplying this 2% critical chance is not the way to go. You need to add base critical chance on top of it. So we're going to be doing, there's a few ways to add base critical chance. The first one, and the one we are going to be using, is an arcane called Arcane Avenger. When you get damaged, there's a 21% chance to get plus 45% crit chance for 12 seconds. And that's not 45% of the 2%, that's 45% plopped on top of that 2%. So it gives you a lot more than a regular like percent mod would. So this is one way to add a large amount of crit chance to a weapon. The other one that we're not going to be using is Adarza Kavat. Adarza Kavat has I believe it's an even larger crit chance buff of 60%, but it's not up all the time. Avenger, you can kind of have that up all the time as long as you're taking damage. Adarza Kavat, I believe it's either a 50% uptime or it's a 1/3 uptime. I think it's a 50% uptime though on that 60%. But that can give you a large damage increase. That 60% again is just plopped on top of the Basmu. It's not 60% of the low 2%. It's actually just 60% plopped on top. And then there's some Warframes that also just add crit chance. I believe Harrow is additive, I believe. Citrine has a ability. I'm not super familiar with Citrine, but she has some kind of an ability where when you attack her crystals, I believe you get like a 300% crit chance. Correct me if I'm wrong though, because I'm not super familiar with Citrine, but I think she's another one. But with this video today, I'm going to show you that this weapon can work even with only one of those external factors. So I'm only going to be using that Arcane Avenger. I was trying to think of the name of it there. So I'm only going to be using Arcane Avenger. And it's going to turn this weapon that is pretty much all white non-criticals into all yellow criticals with even some oranges. So now, of course, you can increase that further if you do use the Adarza Kavat with it, or if you do use a Harrow with all those other things. But I'm going to show that even with just one external, like Arcane Avenger, you can make this Basmu work. Okay, so what else about this weapon? This weapon has a higher than normal multi-shot. So it gets a little bit higher values from having multi-shot mods. This weapon is going to hit, it shoots 2 beams, and each beam can chain up to 5 enemies. And each enemy chained is going to take 50% less damage from the previous beam. So that, you know, your main dude will take full damage, the next dude will take 50% damage, the next dude will take 50% damage of the last dude's damage. So it's going to keep going down and down. But it has the potential to hit a lot of targets because of its chaining. And that might be about it there. It's got innate electricity. And yeah, that's it. Oh, it's in a battery weapon. It's a battery weapon too. If you didn't watch the first Basmu video, I guess you wouldn't know that. So it's a battery weapon. It has 21 shots. After the 21 shots get expended, it's going to pulse. It has like a special little feature where it pulses, and it does 10 true damage to enemies in a small radius around you. And that 10 true damage is going to get multiplied by 10. I think it's just easier to say. You're going to get 100 healing per enemy hit. So you'll get 100 healing per enemy hit by that true damage. So it's another way you can get some like healing with the weapon here. That's pretty cool. The battery, when it is depleted, it's going to take 2 seconds to charge. If you can manage to not go all the way down to 0 when you're shooting the weapon, like if you can only go down to 1 or 2 bullets, it's going to charge almost instantly if you, you know, let off of the shooting button. It's not going to be that. So in the primary fire mode, I was very like cautious or trying very hard to not go down to 0. In the alternate fire mode, you'll see a lot of times during this gameplay, I'm going to go down to 0. And that's okay. Okay, so let's get into the build here. I actually have prepared 2 builds. So I have a build that is viral, and I have a build that's corrosive. Okay, I'll explain the viral build first, and then we'll go into the corrosive build. So they're actually exactly the same except for 1 mod, basically. So the Basmu viral is going to be galvanized chamber for multi-shot, vigilante armaments for more multi-shot, galvanized aptitude for status chance and direct damage per status type affecting the target, vital sense for crit damage, hammer shot for crit damage and status chance. Now remember, you don't want to actually use critical chance mods on this. Critical chance mods aren't really going to do anything to your 2%. But critical damage mods, because this weapon already has a high critical damage multiplier, by using critical damage mods, you're increasing that even further. So just having these 2 crit damage mods on, Vital Sense and Hammer Shot, look at that, that's 13.4 times. That's gigantic. So that's why we're going with crit damage and not crit chance. We're getting our crit chance from those externals that I explained before. I'm sorry I'm kind of skipping around here. I had to like make this build a little bit messier because I was trying to keep my primary build the way it was. So some of the mods are a little bit switched around from where I usually have them. So Rhyme Rounds and Malignant Force is going to make viral. So that's our 60-60 cold and our 60-60 toxin to make viral. And then finally, a fire rate mod. Now you have 2 options here. You have Vigilante Fervor, and then you have the big one. You have the big Vile Acceleration. Now, of course, Vile Acceleration is better than Vigilante Fervor as far as fire rate goes. You know, this one's 90 and this one's 45. So, you know, it's obviously double. The thing is that this weapon already shoots pretty fast. We want to apply statuses really quickly, and that's why we're going for fire rate. But the reason I think Vigilante Fervor could beat out Vile Acceleration, if you notice, we have 3 Vigilante mods on this weapon right now. We have Vigilante Armaments, we have Vigilante Fervor, and we have Vigilante Supplies. And so if you read the effect on the bottom of Vigilante Fervor here, you have a 15% chance to enhance the critical hits from primary weapons. So what that means is that when this effect procs, it's going to turn a yellow into an orange, or it'll turn an orange into a red. And you'll get more of like a bonus damage effect, basically, because of that. So, yes, Vile Acceleration is more fire rate than Vigilante Fervor, but I think I'm personally going to use Vigilante Fervor because we get 3 ticks of that second effect on the bottom here. So without this, we'd only be a 10% chance to enhance critical hits. So with this, we're at 15. So it's very close probably between these two. Kind of pick your poison there, but I want to increase that Vigilante set a little bit higher. So I'm going to go with Vigilante Fervor myself. In the Exilus slot, there are 2 options. Terminal velocity can sometimes increase the length of beam weapons, like how far they'll shoot out. I don't know that it actually works on this weapon. I did not test this. I believe it should work on the weapon, but I did not test it for sure. And that's because I think there's just a straight up better option than terminal velocity, and that would be Vigilante supplies. But if you did want to increase the beam length of the weapon, you might just want to do some testing yourself, and then you could pick terminal velocity if this works. I can't say for sure if it does. If you know, please let me know in the comments. But even if this worked, I think I'm going to pick Vigilante supplies, and it's for the same reason as Vigilante Fervor, just to increase the chance to get higher critical stats. And it's because this weapon shoots extremely quickly, number 1, and the weapon has extremely high multi-shot, number 2. So it's got like the 2 things that makes the Vigilante set really good. So I think Vigilante supplies is the way to go. And that's the build for the Viral here. Oh, and then Arcane you're going to go with Merciless. You can't go with Deadhead, of course. You're not really going to be getting headshots with it, so Merciless is really the way to go. And that's the Viral build. Now, the Corrosive build, if I switch to it, the only thing that's going to change is Rhyme Rounds. So if you noticed, Rhyme Rounds turns into Hunter Munitions. So now if we look at the stats here, we got rid of Electricity because now Malignant Force combined with the innate electricity that's on the weapon and created Corrosive. And Hunter Munitions is going to be our second element. That way Galvanized Aptitude gets a little bit more elements to work off of. Because if you were only down to 1 element, you might as well just use Serration at that point. But because we have 2 here, we're going to use Galvanized Aptitude. So the only thing that changes out of these builds is with Hunter Munitions. Now, this build is only going to be better than the Viral build if you use another external. And that external is going to be 2 green Archon Shards. So Corrosive normally, by itself, without Archon Shards, can only strip enemies to 80% armor strip. It can't full strip enemies. And because it can't full strip enemies, Viral will be better. But with the external of using 2 green Archon Shards to increase Corrosive stacks by 2 each, now with a full stack of Corrosive, you can fully strip enemies. And this will strip enemies extremely quickly because it shoots extremely quickly and it has ridiculous status chance. So like basically as soon as you, like the millisecond you touch that button, an entire group in front of you is stripped, armor stripped. So with that external, with the 2 green Archon Shards, this will be a full stripper, and this will be better than Viral on Grineer-only missions. When you're playing on mixed missions, it'll be probably about the same as Viral. And then obviously, if you're not playing on missions that have Grineer at all, Viral is going to be better. So, but on Grineer-only missions, with the external of having those green Archon Shards, this will be better. So I'm going to do the video with 2 green Archon Shards on my Inaros, just so everyone knows. I'm going to have those 2 green Archon Shards. That's going to increase the max corrosion stacks by 2. Now, when I do the video with this setup, that means I'm going to fully strip. And when I do the video, or when I do the gameplay with the Viral setup, it's going to have basically no effect because I'm not producing corrosive on this. So, like I said, today's going to be a little bit of a different video because this weapon, because it's kind of gimmicky, you do have to use those externals. So it's not going to be structured exactly the same as a normal video. So I'm going to use the viral first. Actually, you know what? I'll use the corrosive first. I'll use the corrosive first because that's going to be very interesting to show everyone how that works. Yeah, and we'll go in. So I'm just going to do 5 minutes. 5 minutes on Kuva Survival on Steel Path, and show how this looks, and then I'm going to do 5 minutes on the viral setup. Now, if you're not willing to use Archon shards to achieve the full strip on the Basmu, then the viral setup's still really powerful. Like, the difference between the corrosive and the viral setup is not that much different. And on maps where there's not all Grenier, the viral setup's going to be about equal, or sometimes even better. Okay, so let us get into Taviuni here. Now, of course, Taviuni. Hey, Nyan, how are you doing this morning? Now, of course, Taviuni is an all Grenier map, so like this is going to be perfect for the corrosive strip. So this is going to make the corrosive look way, way stronger than the viral. But I still wanted to show it off and just show how this works. I'm going to cast my 3 just to give myself some status immunity and armor. And of course, every weapon's going to start off a little bit weak until you get your conditionals up. So if you see, they're just immediately armor stripped. The corrosive setup starts slower than the viral setup. But once you get your kills and your conditionals up, it is better than the viral setup. So I'm at 4 stacks of Merciless. I'm starting to stack my Merciless up, and then it'll be at its full strength here. So now we're at full strength, basically. And so this is going to strip enemies immediately, and it's going to strip a large packs of enemies immediately. Not only that, but every time you completely deplete the magazine, you're going to get a little bit of health regen. Now, Arcane Avenger is very easy to keep up. Literally, all you have to do is take damage. There is like a percent, you don't take damage and have a 100% chance of proccing it, but it's a pretty decent, like, it's not too hard to keep up. It's very easy. I'm basically going to have Arcane Avenger up this entire time. So, normally this weapon is pretty much just going to produce yellows, but because of the Vigilante set, you're going to see some oranges mixed in. Which is nice, because those oranges are going to give us more damage. Now, Hunter Munitions is nice because it gives us another element for Galvanized Aptitude to work on. And it, of course, like bypasses armor, and it's a dot and everything. But I've tried to explain in a few videos is that Hunter Munitions is not always a great option, especially on low damage weapons. And that's because the power of the slash is based on the damage of the weapon. And because this weapon produces large amounts of low damage, like that's basically how it gets its DPS, the slash procs are actually kind of pitiful. So let me find an enemy here. Let me get this guy here. Let me try to load him up with a few slash procs. So he's got 6 slash procs on him, like extremely low damage. I would have to sit here for multiple seconds waiting for those slash procs to do anything. Even on like basic enemies here, so like this guy's got 1 slash proc. I can barely even notice the damage tick on it. So we're using Hunter Munitions more because of the interaction with Galvanized Aptitude. See, this Eximus has had like 9 or 10 or 11 slashes on him, and he's been up for a long time. So Hunter Munitions is not always like the be-all, end-all, should be on every single weapon. It is sometimes, actually a lot of times, weak on low damage weapons. Maybe those weapons have really high DPS and they do a lot of DPS, but each individual shot is very low, which means that each slash proc is going to be very low. On Acolytes, this is not horrible once you're past shields. On shields, it's going to be kind of meh. And then once you're past shields, it'll do an okay amount of damage on the Acolyte. It's not going to be the best Acolyte killer, but it's not like horrible either. I want to make sure I'm killing trash in between, because killing trash is going to make sure I'm staying at my max merciless stats. I wish this Acolyte would kind of be closer to trash so I can keep my merciless stacks up while I'm shooting at him. Alright, so we got the Acolyte down, and we are about at 5 minutes here. So 5 minutes, we're at almost 300 kills, which is pretty damn good. That is, when I do these tests, I do a full 10 minutes, but because this is kind of a weird weapon, I'm doing it with 2 different builds, and so I'm going to do 5 minutes each for each run. But in 10 minutes, average weapons usually get 350 to 400 kills. So this got 300 kills in 5 minutes. So you could expect maybe in 10 minutes to get 550 to 600 kills with this, which would be well above average. So this is a very good weapon. And now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it with the viral setup. The viral setup will not need green Archon shards. I'm going to keep the green Archon shards on because they're not going to do anything to the viral setup, but it won't need green Archon shards, because obviously you don't really care about corrosive procs. All right, so we're switching from the corrosive to the viral setup. And remember, the only thing that changes is the hunter munitions. So from corrosive, it goes from hunter munitions to cold. And that's because we have to mix that cold with the toxic to make viral. And then we're going to get our innate electric, because now that electric's not mixing with anything, so you get the electric with it too. So this will be viral electric. And electric is a dot as well. And electric, you know, it's not as strong of a dot as slash, but you'll see that that we apply a lot more of it with the viral setup. And so the electric dot can actually be very powerful. Same thing, we still have Arcane Avenger on. We didn't switch that. So both gameplays were with Arcane Avenger. The only difference was that the first one with Corrosive also had its 2 green shards that were affecting it.
Scans show Grenier are harvesting Kuva nearby. Set off the alarms to draw them out.
So I'm going to cast my 3 to double my, well, I don't know if it doubles armor anymore. Give me some armor and status immunity. And then we'll start it here. Now the viral setup's going to start a little bit stronger because viral amplifies damage. So it's basically going to give us like a small mini merciless effect basically. So as you see, the viral is still extremely powerful. You're not full stripping things, but you're getting 325% damage amplified, which is a large amount. That's why even though we're not full stripping things, they're taking the full damage reduction, or they're getting their damage reduction applied to this. It's still doing very close to what the corrosive was doing. just because of the 325 damage amplification. And also, because these statuses are applied through natural status chance and not through forced criticals or forced slash procs, these statuses can be, you know, look at the electric statuses on these guys. You know, one blast, I'm getting these up to 63 electric statuses. Like I had over 100. And so the dot from the electric is actually going to be bigger than the dot from the slash and do more damage. So we'll see at the end here how they compare with each other. I'm going to pretty much do like the same, stay in the same area, do about the same gameplay with both of them. The corrosive should be better than viral. It should be noticeably better than viral. I mean, this is pretty much the what you would use corrosive on is Grenier only maps. So we should have corrosive beating viral by quite a bit. If they're similar, then I would say viral is probably just straight up better than corrosive, especially on mixed maps, like not all Grenier maps. All Grenier maps, maybe the corrosive still beats it out. Against the Acolyte, I don't know which one is going to be stronger. I think the Viral might be stronger, because the Corrosive, of course, can't fully strip the Acolyte. But the Acolyte, if I remember correctly, does have weakness to Corrosive. So it does like a little bit more. But the thing with Viral is that 4 stacks of Viral is still 175% damage amplification. So I think that still is better than the Corrosive. But even if you had, you know, the ability to have corrosive and to use the green shards, like let's just say you didn't want to do that, you didn't want to go that far into using externals on the Basmu, like maybe Arcane Avenger was enough, then just use Viral. Viral is extremely powerful. I'm going to guess it's going to be close to corrosive, but I think corrosive will beat it out on this map. It should, because these are all Grenier. If it doesn't, that's a little bit sad on corrosive's part. We also have not gotten Acolyte yet, which might have hurt corrosive a bit, because I spent more time on the corrosive one fighting Acolyte for about a minute. So like we're at 4 minutes in, and I'm at 300. I'm actually over what we had on corrosive at 4 minutes. I just wanted to check at 4 minutes because I figured I spent about a minute fighting the Acolyte. Overstripping? I don't know what you mean by that. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by overstripping. I might just not really understand it. All right, so we're at 5 minutes. We're at 364, which is a lot better than corrosive. And corrosive should have easily beat viral on this map because of it being Grenier, of course. Grenier is like the prime thing you're using corrosive on. But keep in mind, I did not fight. Oh, removing armor removes the corrosive damage buff. Ooh, that's a good point there. That is a good point. I don't know. I don't know that answer, but I never really thought about that. I think their armor type still stays the same, so I don't think that would happen. But that is interesting. So viral will be better on mixed enemies. So like corrupted. Yeah, way back it used to work. Yeah, I've played Warframe for a long time, but I have played it like for the past like 3 to 4-ish years. So like if it was way back, I probably don't remember it. I played Warframe when it first came out, but I played it only for like 6 months and then I put it down. I was like, oh, this game's trash, and I put it down, and then like friggin' 8 years later, I came back, and now it's my favorite game ever. Gotcha. Yeah, I know what you're saying now. I understand it. I don't remember like when that was a thing, or if it's even still a thing. It might still be a thing. I don't think so though. I think enemy armor types are going to stay the same. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. So out of the two builds, I really think Viral performed better than Corrosive, and Corrosive should have been notably different against Viral, like notably better. Um, in its defense, I did spend about a minute fighting the Acolyte on Corrosive, but it really should have like pooped all over Viral on a Grenier only map. So for that reason, I think the Viral setup is going to be better. And it also requires less conditionals. You don't need to use those 2 green Archon shards. Um,
Operator, did you hear that? It said.
so, but the corrosive setup, I mean, you could use the corrosive setup with 2 green Archon shards if you want to have a weapon that strips things. Like you saw how quickly this thing strips groups of enemies. So like if you're maybe using another weapon or you're using Warframe abilities and you just want to have a way to strip large groups of enemies like right in front of you, you can just simply like tap your alt fire with the Basmu, bam, you get like 10 or 12 enemies stripped right in front of you. So I think the corrosive might have utility uses, and it is still quite strong. I mean, it's not a weak weapon. I mean, almost 300 kills in 5 minutes would mean like about 550 to 600 kills in 10 minutes. And again, when I do these tests, average weapons are at 350 to 400. So that's like, close to being double what an average weapon is. So that's still extremely powerful. This, though, the viral setup is even more powerful, or maybe the same if you were to take the Acolyte fight into account with the corrosive there. So maybe the same. But on non-Grenier only maps, like on mixed maps or maps where there's no Grenier at all, viral will definitely be better. So yeah, this is the Basmu alt fire. I'm not going to do like the full gameplay video that I normally do, just because this is kind of like a gimmicky weapon. I would have to like switch back and forth to look at both of these setups. I think both these setups are good. So you kind of pick what you want. You want viral, pick this one. You want corrosive, pick this one. So that should be it. That's the Basmu alt fire. Hope you guys liked the video, and if you liked it, give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed, let me know what I can do to earn your sub, and or consider subscribing. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day. Bye.